Well, good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome to today's webinar, which is the first in a brand new series of business builder webinars that I'll be presenting over the coming months, kicking off today with pricing for profit. My name's Ian Macdonald, and I look after business development and corporate finance at Robert J. Hart and Company, Chartered Accountants, which means that I spend kind of most of my time helping businesses identify and implement their growth strategies. And I also spend all too much time nowadays helping businesses having to restructure their banking, raise finance, access grants, etc., etc. But the concept of this series of business builder webinars is all about recognizing that most businesses out there, or certainly very many businesses out there, often forget to focus on some of the real kind of back to basics. The back to basics concepts and ideas and business tools that we should be relying on. And it's that issue that I want to kind of tackle today, because often the reason that businesses really aren't able to focus on the important back to basics ideas, rules and concepts is mainly because they get bogged down in the doing bit, the kind of at the coalface, the firefighting, and frankly just never get enough time to work on their businesses rather than just in their businesses. So it's with that in mind that we are launching our series of back to basics business strategy seminars. But this time we're doing it, online. And for those of you who may have attended our previous series of business builder seminars, I guess it might be bad enough that you're having to listen to me again, but at least this morning you don't have to see me too, but enough of that. Can I say how delighted I am at the number of businesses that have come online to join us this morning? I can tell you that we have a pretty diverse range of businesses, business sectors, and really quite a wide range in terms of business size too, which is really great. I can see that we have a good number of RJ Hart clients, so welcome to you and thank you for taking the time to join us this morning. I'm also pleased to see that we have quite a number of non-RJ Hart clients, so that's great. So if this is the first contact you've had with us, I do hope you enjoy what you hear this morning and welcome on board. I can also see that we have a good representation of people from Scottish Enterprise, some of the local authorities and various economic development functions out there, so welcome to you two guys. And let me see, last but not least, I guess we've got some representation from our banking community too, so that's great. Welcome to everyone. Can I just at this stage add that at the end of this webinar I'll share with you details on some additional resources that you might find helpful following this webinar, but I'll also give you details on how you can arrange to have a free one-to-one coaching session with us to either help look at your own pricing strategies or your growth plans or accountancy matters or anything else that you think that we might be able to help you with. I'd be delighted to offer you that, and we'll share more information with you at the end of this session. And also at the end of the session I'm going to share with you some details of a very special and pretty unique event that we are hosting in March. I'm excited to say that we are bringing all the way from Australia a guy called Professor Keith Cleland. Keith is a pretty exceptional guy. He is a world-renowned consultant, an author, and an expert on really a pretty unusual concept he has developed, a concept which helps target and measure business performance in a completely different way, and the effect of his methodology is that it can really quite quickly enhance profit performance and cash flow. So I'll give you more information on how you might be able to join us at that particular seminar, or it's a couple of seminars actually, after we finish up this morning. And finally, can I just say that I'd be more than happy to take any questions that you have as we work our way through the webinar this morning. If you'd like to ask a question, what I suggest is that you use the little dialogue box as we go through the session. And then what I plan to do, with your permission, is to spend a little bit of time at the end of the webinar answering as many of those questions and queries as I can. So if that's all right with everyone, that's the introduction over. Let's get the show on the road. I think I'd like to start by saying something pretty obvious, and that is that through working with lots and lots of businesses right across Scotland, actually, I know it's pretty tough out there, and that some are finding it tougher than others, and there's absolutely no doubt that when it comes to pricing, many businesses are being squeezed. Been squeezed pretty hard, because the reality is that our customers want much more from us for much less. And of course this brings into play the whole pressure and issues surrounding prices in the current environment. So I understand that. Can I also say that I quite often see or hear businesses who should really be taking more action right now, either to tackle these pricing challenges or to capture new pricing opportunities, but really understandably at times are unable to do so, and they're unable to do so because of time pressures. I remember a couple of years back discussing business performance with I guess what we'd call a fairly chunky engineering business. They weren't clients of ours, but it was a fairly chunky engineering business, and during that discussion we turned our attention to the idea of taking time out to work on the business and not just in the business. And being told by the directors and the managing director, and I'll never forget, he said something along the lines of, "Ian, you know, we just don't have the time to work on the things we know are critical to our business." And when you think about that, you know, what an admission. We just don't have the time to work on the things we know are critical to our business. So I hope during the course of this morning that perhaps we can realize that there are issues within our business that we do need to spend time on, and that we do need to take a far more strategic approach to. So my objective this morning, my objective for each and every one of you this morning is quite simple, and that is to ask you, or to challenge each and every one of you, to commit to take some action today, to commit to perhaps finding at least one or more ideas from this session, and to take the time and the energy and focus to look to find ways that you can introduce that idea into your business. So that's my simple challenge to each and every one of you this morning. Just a little bit of scene setting, as it were. You know, this whole notion that pricing is a strategic element of our business rather than it just being a number element. So price isn't just a price. There's a lot more to our price. So why do we need to consider price to be a strategic element of our business? And you know, what's the evidence that taking a strategic approach, taking a time out and a more focused approach to how we price our products or services, why by doing that, why by taking that time out, will that be of benefit to us? And I'd also like just to take a little bit of time to to dwell on some pretty basic thoughts about price, maybe to put ourselves more into the shoes of the customer rather than the business owner, and certainly as the business owner of our own businesses, but to try and think about what it's like and how we respond to pricing, just to get us thinking about pricing generally before we then perhaps move into an area of looking at pricing and pricing strategy and some examples that I want to share with you today. Anyway, some of you may have heard of an organization called Simon-Kucher, who are one of the world's largest consultancy practices. They are a globally based organization and do some really quite astonishing work, working with many, many companies, as I say, around the world. And Simon-Kucher carried out, this last couple of years in fact, they've carried out their global pricing study. And what I'd like to do is just to read you a very short extract from their most recent global pricing study, which took place, I think, towards the tail end of last year, or the results were concluded at the tail end of last year. And as you can see, it says, pricing is by far the most important profit lever, but most companies hugely underestimate its impact. A 2012 pricing study of 2,700 executives and managers from over 50 countries revealed that profits jump when CEOs take an active role in pricing. In the previous global pricing study in 2011, it became clear that 65% of companies do not charge the prices they deserve for their products. This pricing weakness cuts profits by 25%. Now, if that is not sufficient evidence to suggest that we need to be looking at pricing at a more strategic level, and I don't know what is, but let me just kind of pick out some of the key points on that statement, if I may. And these key points are: pricing is an important profit lever. In other words, by looking at our pricing, it can give leverage to our profitability. He also goes on, or they also go on to say rather, profits jump when CEOs take an active role in pricing. For that, read, profits jump when business owners and management teams take an active role in pricing. So for that, read, profits jump when we take the time out to look at pricing. They also go on to say that 65% of companies do not charge the prices they deserve. That's 2 out of 3 of you listening in this morning are not charging the prices that you deserve. And finally, that as a result of that, price weakness cuts profits by 25%. So as I say, if we need any evidence to suggest to us that we perhaps need to look at pricing in a different way within our business, then I think this is a great example. The conclusion of the report, and at the end of this morning's session, I'll give you details on how you can access this report and lots of other resources from Simon-Kucher. The conclusion of this report essentially says businesses perform significantly better when business owners and managers take ownership of pricing strategy, and businesses who do this are 30% more likely to grow profits. So I guess the question for you this morning is, do you want to be one of these businesses who are more likely to grow your profits? So, moving on from there, I am all too well aware that when it comes to pricing and pricing strategies, there are lots and lots of complex models out there. But you'll be pleased to know this morning that I'm really not going to spend any time looking at these complex pricing strategies. Rather, I'm going to look at some pretty back to basics, fundamental pricing strategies, giving you some real life examples that I hope you might be able to use in your business. And I should just say that as we go through these examples today, it's not so much about the specific example. It's not so much about, I'm in a different business sector, so I don't understand how this example might fit for me. It's more about taking the concept, the broad concept of that strategy, and seeing how you can adapt and adopt that strategy within your own business. I want to put that into 3 broad ranges of approach to pricing that I often come across. I come across a lazy approach. I come across an easy approach, and actually I'm quite a fan of an easy approach to pricing. And we come across those who take a strategic approach. But let's look firstly at this idea of a lazy approach. And the truth of it is, I'm kind of in a fortunate position in so much as I get to speak to lots of businesses and I get to see how they perform. I also get to see how they perform in real financial terms as a firm of accountants. So you know, we get to see the numbers as well as the as the sort of cosmetic stuff in the surface. And when I'm working with companies, I like to challenge them fairly early on about this question of how do you set your prices? And you might want to think about this yourself. How do you set your prices? Because I often find when I ask a business owner or the management team that question, it's met with to a certain extent a degree of hesitancy, because there is no articulate or clear answer to it. And when pressed, we tend to find that the response are things like, well, you know, we know where we're placed in the market, and we know where our competitors are, so we kind of just follow that. You know, it's kind of what we can get away with in the marketplace, and we make judgment calls on that. And I guess that's a fair response to a large extent, but there's no meat behind that, there's no detail behind that, and there's no strategy behind that. Some might say to me, well, we do a kind of cost plus approach. You know, in other words, we'll cost out our product or service. We'll look at everything that makes up the cost to us before we deliver to the client, and then we'll mark that up. We'll add a margin. So, you know, we might mark it up by 25%. But again, when I say, well, that's great, you know, and it is a good answer, you've clearly costed this out and we've decided to add a margin, but what margin? And if it's 25%, why was it 25%? Why was it not 27%? Why was it not 20%? So what was the reason? What was the decision-making process that decided what you do there? So this is what I'm calling, possibly unfairly, the lazy approach, but you get the idea. It's kind of ad hoc, it's on the hoof, and it's a bit reactionary. The next approach is what I love to call the easy approach, and you can see right in the middle of the screen that an easy approach here to pricing and to profitable pricing is to consider putting your prices up. Now, I can hear gasps already saying, heaven forbid, do you really think in this market today that we can all consider putting prices up? You know, is this something that we really should be looking at doing? But you know, what I want to do is to maybe get a little bit behind this idea and perhaps build some confidence for you, and look at some consequences and some fears, because obviously people tend to say, you know, putting prices up, I'm really nervous of doing that. I'm frightened of it because, you know, the biggest consequence is I'm likely to lose business or lose customers. So we're going to have a look at that. But I want us to understand the need to putting prices up, because often when I start working with businesses, I find there are some quick wins or some easy wins in this particular area. So let me just kind of develop some questions here. You might want to be thinking about this in your own business. Firstly, how often is it that you find when you're quoting for business or you're pitching for business or wherever, and you don't get that business, that you've lost it on price and in price alone? So in other words, how often are you losing business on price? And the other thing to consider here is, when you are pricing and sending out quotes, etc., how often are your customers coming back and complaining to you about price? Because one of the little indicators I've noticed over the years is that quite often people will sort of say we are in a price-sensitive market, but when questioned on how much business do they lose on price or how many customers are complaining, actually the answer is, well, you know, not that many. And if the answer for you is not that many, then it might just be a little indicator that there is room for you to consider increasing your price, because you would always expect some price resistance. So I guess that takes us to a key question. By how much could you increase your prices tomorrow? For instance, could you tomorrow decide to increase your prices by 10% or more? Now, I'm sure some of you are thinking, well, hang on, 10% is a big hike, there's lots of consequences of that, and I understand that. But some of you I know may well be sitting thinking, well, if I sit and consider this, if I take a different approach to that, it is possible. Yes, I could possibly look to increase my prices by 10%. But for those of you who think, hang on, that's too big a number, then you might say, well, what about, just a tiny little 1% increase in my price? Is that something that we could tolerate? So let's just kind of put that into some sort of context here. If, for instance, you were going to consider a 10% price increase, then for a business that has a product being sold at £10, that means that we're pushing up to £11. For a business that is selling a product or service at £200, it means that we might be considering pushing it up to £220. And for a business that's selling a product or service at £8,000, we're looking to push that up to £8,800. And similarly, at the other end of the spectrum, if we were just going to push our price up by 1%, because that's all we could get away with, then of course what we're looking at is a £10 product is going up to only £10 and 10 pence. A £200 product is going up to £202, and an £8,000 product or service is going up to £8,080. Now, I think it's useful just to look at those numbers in that sort of context, because when we think about big percentage price increases, we tend to exaggerate the impact of that. But when we actually examine it in terms of numbers, it can, in fact, be a lot less daunting. What I'd like to do is quickly to share a little poll with you, a live online poll where in a few seconds I'm going to ask you all to complete this little short online poll for me. It's only going to take a few seconds, in which I'm going to ask you this very question, the question about how much could you potentially increase your prices by, whether you could manage 10% or perhaps nothing at all, or whether you could manage just a tiny 1% or maybe something in between. You get the idea. So I'm just about to do that now, and hopefully that poll should be up on screen now. So yeah, there we go. As I say, if you could just quickly choose your response for me, that would be great. And I'm just coming out of that now. So let me just close that down, and let's just have a look at the results there. So hopefully those results are coming up now, and that's quite interesting. So 20% of you online this morning are telling me that you can increase your prices by about 20%, which is fantastic. The vast majority are telling me, about 60%, that we could look at somewhere between 5 and 6%. 13% are saying 1 or 2%, and there are 7% who are saying there's no possibility of increasing prices at all. Now that is quite fascinating and is not untypical. So we've got 93% of you online today are acknowledging that you can increase your prices. Okay, let's just take that a little bit further forward then. For those businesses, and sorry that's a little bit busy slide, but for those businesses who can consider increasing their price by 1%, just by a tiny 1%, and if that business had a turnover of, let's say, £100,000, then by tomorrow looking to implement that tiny 1% price increase on a turnover of £100,000 will deliver straight to the bottom line an additional £1,000 of profit just by recognizing a small 1% price increase. Now, if you are turning over £100,000 and you can increase your prices by 1%, then there you go. By joining this webinar this morning, I'm delighted to have contributed £1,000 to the bottom line of your business. But let's develop that further. If you're a business that's turning over, say, £450,000, that's £4,500 straight to your bottom line. And if your business is turning over £1 million, then that's £10,000 straight to the bottom line. And I also know, incidentally, I won't name names, but I know that there are at least a couple, possibly more, companies on board with us this morning who are turning over many millions of pounds, and therefore, you know, the idea of a 1% price increase in those circumstances becomes a really interesting number. If we go to the other end of the spectrum, of course, if you could look to increase your prices by 10% and you have a £100,000 turnover, then by doing that, we have the potential to add £10,000 straight to the bottom line of your business. 450,000 turnover, £45,000 to the bottom line of your business, and if you're turning over £1 million, by looking to find a way to implement a 10% price increase, we can add hundreds of thousands of pounds to the bottom line of your business. Now again, if that's not compelling financial evidence as to why we should be looking at potentially an easy way that we can develop a pricing strategy that adds value and adds real profit performance to our bottom line, then I don't know what is. And of course, I'm sure you've all realized that the graphic along the bottom here is the best articulation I could come up with of a bottom line. However, enough said on that. So moving along, I do, of course, fully recognize that as we look to challenge businesses about their pricing, and just this very baseline notion of increasing prices, that often the conversation develops into this whole area of the fear of losing clients, and it's a real fear, and it's something we really need to be very, very careful of. But when we stand back from that initial notion and start to develop a strategic approach, a thoughtful approach to our pricing, then we can start asking some good questions like, if we were to increase our prices, how many clients would we actually lose? Could we simulate that process? Could we consider what the likely effect would be? So how many clients would we actually lose? And consider that against how many we could potentially afford to lose. So how many customers could we afford to lose, but implement a price increase that would cover the costs of those lost clients? This whole idea of potentially losing clients means that as part of that pricing strategy, we need to develop strategies to minimize client defection, in other words, strategies to minimize that loss of clients, and also to recognize that from time to time we may well lose clients, so we need to consider supporting strategies that look at how we replace those lost clients. But there's one really interesting question that I think is central to this whole question of losing clients, because what I'd question you on is, if you have a fear of losing clients, think of this. Which type of client is it that you're going to lose? Is it the type of client that you have a long-term relationship with, the type of client who values that relationship, the type of client who knows the value of your product and service, the type of client who would talk to you about pricing issues, who you have a very strong long-term partnership-led working relationship? Is it that type of client that you're going to lose, or is it the type of client who is just price sensitive on everything? they're the problem clients, the type of client that moans about everything, that takes up so much of your time, complains. It's the old kind of 80-20 scenario. These type of clients are, taking up 80% of your time and contributing 20% of your profit. These are the type of clients actually that, we probably don't make very much money on at all, if at all. So there is a question in here about what type of client would you lose and what type of client are you prepared to lose. There is an argument, in fact, for the more daring of you that suggests that you might want to sack clients, heaven forbid, sack clients who are not profitable to you and who are not giving you the price that you deserve and therefore the profit contribution that you deserve too. So we need to have a little bit of confidence that we can deal with this whole concept of losing clients or the fear of losing clients. Getting back to, I want to just pick up the pace a little bit, but in this session I just want us to think about price more on a kind of psychological level, if you like. How do we feel as consumers rather than as business owners and managers trying to look at price? So how do we respond to price as consumers? And if you'd all care to just kind of look to the floor right now and look at that nice pair of shoes that you're wearing right now, how many of us are wearing the singularly cheapest pair of shoes that we could find out there, that we strutted up and down the high street not looking for anything other than the cheapest pair of shoes we could buy? And of course I would hazard a guess that very few of us have in fact done that, and the process tends to be more a question of balancing value and price. So in other words, what is the value of the product? Do we consider these new shoes that we're buying to be great value for the price that we're paying? And so it goes. The same happens with wines that we choose to buy. The same happens with ladies when they're out buying fashion. Are they out there to buy the cheapest dress they can possibly buy? Or are they out there to buy a dress that represents exceptional value and makes them feel good? And interestingly enough, there is a great feel-good factor about quality products and paying a little bit more for them. It's the exact same kind of psychology when we buy cars and, of course, houses too. So it's this idea that we don't buy the cheapest, we buy value, and there's a fundamental link between value and price. Let's just skip through a fairly simple idea. Who buys the cheapest wine, for instance? If we go into a supermarket and we're looking for a middle-of-the-road bottle of red, then typically that supermarket will have that bottle of red on the shelf for £4.50, for instance. Now, if we choose not to go to the supermarket and we decide we're just going to nip down to the local corner shop because it's a last-minute decision that we want to get a bottle of wine that evening, we'll go into the corner shop and happily pay £6.50 for the exact same bottle of wine. And if we develop that further, if we believe we're a little bit more discerning and we enjoy our wines and we enjoy having knowledge of wines, then we might choose to buy our wines from a wine merchant, in which case we will go into that wine merchant and we will choose willingly to pay, say, £8.75 for that pretty similar bottle of red wine. And again, it's this whole idea that we're making choices about how much we're prepared to pay for a product in differing circumstances. In fact, just completing the picture in the example of wine, I'm sure some of you have experienced personal wine tasting events, be that at a corporate event or indeed by invitation to your home. And the whole process here is different, where that £4.75, £4.50 bottle of wine now becomes £11.75 a bottle, because of the environment in which we are being introduced to buy this wine. And not only that, the magic goes further, because this £11.75 bottle of wine now becomes £141 a case, because it's sold by the case. And not only that, you cannot buy one case, you've got to buy two cases. So we now have a £282 sale. So the idea is that there are lots and lots of different ways that we can look to place our product in the market, achieve different prices, and that as consumers we are happy to play that game too. So really, just to kind of sum that part up, it's actually the same bottle of wine, but it's a different process, or it's a different audience, or it's a different positioning and price structure, or it's a packaging and labeling that's different. In other words, it's the presentation, it's how they do it, it's how they sold it to us, it's the entire experience that helps add value to pricing and allows us to deliver more profitable pricing. So the conclusion from this is that I guess there is possibly a different way or a better way for you to price. And it's not just the price. Price is not just the price. It's the value, stupid. So show them the value. That's one of the key lessons when it comes to pricing, is show our customers the value. A little word of caution on what I'm going to call price traps, because I think it's important just briefly to touch on some of these areas. There are three key price traps that I'd like you just to think about, and they tend to all focus on this notion of people who want to compete in the marketplace by discounting, by offering, cuts in price as a mechanism to grow market share. And whilst in some circumstances that can be an important strategy to play, it's a much more deep process, and it needs a lot more attention to detail. And there's some cautious areas I want to share with you. So the first is what's commonly called the low quality trap. That's where if we have a product or a service that seems just too good to be true, too cheap, then our customers might assume that to be a poor quality product. So you need to be very mindful of that. For those of you like me who are old enough to remember Gerard Ratner of Ratner's Jewelers, in I think it would probably be the very early 90s, who was proud to announce to the whole of the country that his $4.99 or whatever it was piece of jewelry, he could sell at that price because it was in fact complete crap, and was delighted to announce that to the whole of the country, yet was incredibly surprised that his business went bust pretty quickly thereafter. So we've got to be careful that if we're wanting to kind of discount or put out very competitive pricing, we just need to be aware that there are quality issues in there too, and we don't want our customers to perceive that you are of lower quality. The next area is market share and kind of the shallow pockets trap too. That is where we have customers who, or rather where we are trying to win customers by competing with others in the sector solely on price, and at the end of the day, by playing that game, it tends to be the business with the deeper pockets that can outrun on you on that promotional timeline. And in fact, all you do is end up losing a lot of money. So just be very wary of these price traps. So far we've quickly looked at this kind of lazy approach to pricing. We've looked at this easy approach, and I do challenge you to perhaps have a look at, can you increase your prices? Because if that's something you can do, then there is money sitting on the table waiting for you to grab it right now. We've had some thoughts about this notion between price and value, and we've looked at some price traps. So now I want to move on to this kind of more detailed area of a more strategic approach to pricing. Turning briefly back to Simon Kucher's research, here's some other key pointers that have come out of their research. And again, as I say, I'll share more of this with you after the webinar, tell you where you can get more of this resource. But essentially, their research shows that price is in fact 80% strategy and is at the core of successful pricing. So it's reaffirming this strategy idea. Pricing strategy must be clearly defined for the lifetime of each product and be robust enough to adapt to changes. So we need to be looking at a long-term view and its adaptability. And often businesses with weak pricing strategies find themselves making decisions haphazardly. It's reactionary or it's casual ad hoc. So we've kind of covered that. But it's just to reinforce that there is very good reason and good evidence as to why we should be looking at our pricing from a strategic point of view. I'd like now to share with you some kind of real-life examples. They are strategic, but they are what I believe to be fairly simple strategies that we can all look to put in place in our businesses. Now, I'm not suggesting that this is a very simple process. It does take a little bit of time and effort, but I believe that the examples I'm about to share with you are good little easy examples that are fairly easy to understand, and I hope you can perhaps get some ideas from. The first of these is about knowing your competition, and I'm sure we can all understand that in our pricing it's important that we know our competition. The second power principle in pricing is the notion that we might be able to relaunch our products or services as a new package, and in doing so introduce new prices. The third is that we should consider charging different customers different prices for, in fact, the same product, and we'll have a look at that. I then want to chat about the idea of discounting and why we might need to control discounts, and finally the need to test our pricing strategies. So let me quickly run through some of these examples with you. Dealing firstly with this whole idea of knowing our competition. Now, I think we would all acknowledge that it is important we know and understand our competition, but again, from experience in working with many companies, when we have a chat about competition, I often find, all too often, that there isn't actually a huge amount of competitor knowledge out there. And particularly nowadays, remember that Google is your friend, as they say, and you know, on the click of a mouse we can access lots and lots of information, and one of the best things you can do is spend a little bit of time Googling your competitors. If, incidentally, you don't have what you would call direct competitors, then Google others in similar market sectors, because you might glean some ideas there. But the whole idea is that you want to look at what's different between what your competitor is offering and what you're offering. What are the similarities? Where are you overlapping? What you know? What are they promoting? What are they looking to? What messages are they looking to get out there? How are they pricing? Are they showing visible pricing? Are they dealing with pricing in a slightly different way from you? So, you know, having a look as closely as you can to glean how they're showing the value of the product or service, what price they're commanding for that, are they discounting or not? And in doing that, you're looking to spot weaknesses in your own organization. So are they doing things that you're not doing? And equally, can you spot opportunities? Are there things that you can do that they're not doing? So it's about looking at this entire process. What are they doing? And another really useful tip is, you know, try and get a hold of one of your competitors' quotes. And by that I mean literally the piece of paper that they would send out as a quote, because within that document, often businesses miss a very, very powerful trick where the quote consists of 3 lines saying, to supply of product and service, £300 plus VAT, and that's kind of it. So looking at the quality and the wording of a quote and how you present your quotes is a very useful thing to do to help differentiate you and hold your pricing up. So a very simple idea is that it's really, really important that we look at our competition. The second area I'd like to look at is a strategy that I would loosely call relaunching your product as a new package. And by that I mean that it's effectively the same product or service, but we're going to relaunch it. We're going to give it a new set of clothes here, and we're going to give it, perhaps it might be some new performance guarantees, some new promises as to what our product can do, new service standards, in other words, a new way of looking after our customers, new benefits, and therefore new prices, and for new prices read increased prices, and for increased prices read more profit. So let me give you a real life example of a roofing client we know who typically would be called out to look at a house to carry out a roof repair. They would visit the house, let the customer know who they were, obviously, stick the ladder up onto the roof, climb up there, have a look at what work was needed done, get back down, go into the house and describe the damage that they've seen to the customer, give them an estimate, and assuming that the customer wanted to go ahead, they would then go ahead, complete the job, and get paid. And at that time, let's say this roofing contractor was charging £500 for that particular piece of work. Let's now think about that in a slightly different way, because this is what this roofing client did. They decided to relaunch that same product, but look at it in a completely different way. And what they did was this. Now, just imagine this scenario. So the roofing contractor is invited to come out and have to give a quote to carry out the repair. And as he arrives, the first thing he says to the client is, whilst I'm up on the roof assessing the damage, I'm going to leave with you this folder, and this folder is full of testimonial letters that we have received from satisfied, no, delighted customers and clients who have been thrilled with the quality of what we've done. So whilst I'm up on your roof, you take just a few minutes to read through that. You can see that's a very powerful thing to do. When he comes back down from the roof, he starts to explain to you that as part of the service that they provide, they're going to provide you with what they call a turn up and clean up guarantee. And by that, they decided that they would say to a customer, if we do not turn up on time, or we do not clean up afterwards to your complete satisfaction, we will knock 50 quid off the bill. And that was a guarantee they looked to introduce. They also did something quite clever, which was, while they were up on the roof, they now use a little phone camera to actually video the damage on the roof, so that they could effectively go down and let the client see the damage, because most roofing clients aren't actually going to go up onto the roof themselves. So there's a lot of value and credibility by actually showing that customer what the value is, rather what the damage is. So the idea is that you would show that they would video the damage before and after, and in fact, the more I look at that, no, you wouldn't want to show them the damage before and the damage after. That wouldn't be a good way to do it. I think it'd be more about the idea of showing the damage before and then showing the fantastic repair you've done after, so the before and after. So that was a really clever idea. He also now explains that there is no need to pay until they are absolutely completely delighted with the work, and what better evidence than showing the video of this fantastic repair that's been done. He also advises that there is an overriding quality guarantee, which is that there will be no leaks on that repair for the next 3 years, or if there are, it will be fixed completely free of charge. He also advises that when his team arrive to do the work, they all turn up on time, very smart, wearing logos, etc. They're fully safety trained, which just reinforces the quality of the organization. And he also advises that as a result of having done this repair for them, that he will be happy to provide a free roof inspection every couple of years. So every couple of years he will arrive unannounced, stick the ladder up onto your roof, have a look round about, and just make sure everything's okay for you. And as a result of having delivered this new service standard, this new package, the price is £650. Now, I don't know about you, but £500 for the first scenario, or £650 for the exact same product, but delivered and relaunched in a different way that shows more value, that is more meaningful to the client, I think, commands that type of premium. And I think a significant number of us would probably agree that we'd be happy to pay that extra £150 for that type of quality of service. But here's the really interesting thing. If we now look at the kind of maths behind that, what type of business would you like to be here? So initially it was a £500 sale with a £300 cost of sale, delivering a £200 profit, for instance, on that job. But all of a sudden, for the same job, we've now charged £650 with the same £300 cost, and now a profit of £350, which is an astonishing 75% increase in profitability just by looking to take our existing product or service and relaunch it in a different way with new values and with a new proposition that our clients can see that value in and are prepared to pay more. So in other words, if you want more, you need to act like you're worth it. We also were working a short time ago with a specialist equipment manufacturing company who had a really large order opportunity. It was an order to provide some equipment. I think initially the order was in the region of £50,000 or thereby. When they were given the opportunity to quote for this, it was absolutely clear that they were being told to sharpen the pencil, to get the price down, etc., etc. But essentially, we developed a strategy that allowed a new presentation a new pitch to be made. And the idea is that they went to their client saying, look, rather than just sort of quoting for this £40,000-50,000 job, we'd like to take a kind of more longer term view. So what we're going to do is to introduce a stocking plan. And by that, what we're going to do is that we will hold an entire month's worth of stock in our stores for you, ready to draw down at any given time. So we'll have that made and available on our shelves, ready for you to draw down at any time. We will introduce your own brand, so we'll put your labeling on that product. We will give you some ongoing reports about that stock utilization. We'll come and meet with you 3 times a year to have a review on how sales are going, etc. And in fact, they actually built in and delivered some sales training to their clients' sales team as part of it. And as a result of that, they also negotiated some quite favorable payment terms, because the relationship had taken a different dimension. The result of that strategy was that not only were they able to protect their kind of key pricing, they didn't in fact have to discount the price, but they were also able to increase the order value, and that order suddenly changed from being a one-off order to an annual commitment of something in the order of £100,000. So there's another way where we can take the exact same product or service but relaunch it in a different way and engage with a client in a different way. A little side strategy I came across was a window blinds manufacturer who had gone through this process of relaunching their products and services, looking at ways that they could add value, and as part of that they were introducing new fabrics and the new pricing, etc. But the interesting thing was that historically, when they were showing prospective clients their catalogue of fabrics, they would initially start at the cheapest and move towards the most expensive. And the idea of reversing that, where they started to introduce the client to the most expensive product first and then move down the price line, actually had the effect of increasing their average sale from £345 to £395. So that's just an interesting little kind of loose pricing strategy that some of you might have an opportunity to use. The third power principle, and I'm going to pick up the pace a little bit here because I'm conscious of everyone's time. The third power principle is this recognition that different customers will in fact pay different prices at different times. So what do I mean by that? Well, no one really objects when we book a flight or a holiday, for instance, and we realize that because we booked early, we've got a really good price, and that if it's been a last-minute booking, that we are paying a lot more for that seat in that plane. We don't sort of walk onto the plane and say, how dare all you people sitting in here, how dare you have bought your seat far cheaper than me because you bought it earlier or whatever. So this idea of the scarcity, the timing is also true, whether it's urgent or non-urgent. So if we need to call a plumber out as a result of a burst, we recognize that we will pay more for that rather than if we're calling them out to do some planned maintenance on our boiler or whatever. So, timing plays an important part. The idea of eating out in restaurants where we can either choose to go a la carte or the set menu, we fully realize that by going a la carte that we are potentially choosing something off that menu which we could have had cheaper by going from the set menu. So we fully understand that we can charge different prices at different times and under different circumstances for the exact same product. The supermarket or the specialist wine merchant is an example we've already spoken about. In terms of filling up slots in the day, so daytime slots for old age pensioners, or students, when is a good time to introduce concessionary pricing? The idea of minimum orders, so we can adjust price based on how large or small the order is, and similarly we can adjust price based on the payment terms. So the idea that we should recognize is that no one objects when we charge different prices to different people under different circumstances at different times for the exact same product. So if we can recognize that is possible, let's quickly look at some of the sums here. And I know these slides are going to be a little bit busy, but just imagine that you had 100 customers. And that of those 100 customers, 90 of them are willing to pay you £5 for your product, but unbeknown to you, 10 of them are willing to pay you £10 for that product. But you're not aware that 10 of them are prepared to pay £10 for that product, so we charge all 100 customers £5 each. The unit cost is £4, giving us a total profit of £100. Now let's say, what if we had to spend a little bit of time recognizing that in fact 10% of our customers, under certain circumstances, dependent on the time or how we present our product or service to them, we might be able to charge them £10 instead of £5. So now let's look at the maths here. The maths shows that having identified that some customers are prepared to pay us a little bit more money, then our profit increases from £100 to £150 just by having developed a strategy that recognizes that some of our customers under certain circumstances are prepared to pay more for that same product or service. So the question is, what do you want? Do you want £100 profit or £150 profit, 20,000 profit, 30,000 profit, 100,000 profit, or £150,000 profit? This is a strategy that takes a little bit of time but is highly worthwhile investigating. Remember one thing, however, that if we are going to be charging different prices to different customers at different times, of course it goes without saying that we do so legitimately, credibly and professionally and with integrity at all times. We're not talking about stitching up customers here. We're looking at well thought out pricing strategies that are good for our customers and are good for our business. Power principle number 4 about controlling discounts is a very simple idea, but one that is very, very poignant, let's say, and it's one I want to share with you now. And we had a manufacturing business who had what we've called their hidden price monster. Now by that, what I mean is that we had a company who, broadly speaking, in very simplistic terms, were an engineering company who were turning over 2 million in sales. Their total cost of sales was, or their total costs were 1.95 million, leaving a relatively modest, I suppose, £50,000 profit, which is not all too uncommon, I guess. And we were looking to help this business to see how we could improve profitability, how we could develop some strategies generally that would help this business on its on its growth journey. And when we started to do some work, we came across a number. And this number was not a number that any firm of accountants would normally find out. In fact, it's not a number that appears in any sets of financial accounts that you would ever care to look at. And the reason for that is that when we started looking behind the numbers, what this engineering company's set of financial accounts should have looked like was a bit like this. So, in fact, the entire amount of sales that that company would have generated had they charged their customers full list price would have been £3 million. But that their sales team, in their efforts to win business, had given away discounts totaling £1 million. So £1 million worth of discounts against the quoted list price. Now, I know there's a lot of issues within that, but you get the idea here. There was no recognition, there was no recording of that information. In fact, all the financial system showed was the recorded sales. So we had this hidden price monster in here of a business who were claiming their list price and their sales to be worth £3 million, but their sales team had in fact given away £1 million of those discounts. So what do we do about this? And if you're in a business where you are giving discounts, then it's quite important that you should start measuring those discounts. And so the strategy behind discounting, if you're going to do that, is that you really, really do need to measure. You need to make sure that, you know, we're not losing that knowledge and that information, because when you start looking at that information, we realize it's a real mind focuser. And therefore we've got to put controls in place, and those are normally some kind of measurement financial controls. The way this particular company tackled the problem was they introduced some sales training and some sales negotiation training that helped their sales team to hold prices up and not to give such big discounts. And they also had a more broad brush look at their discounting structures and what the circumstances might be when they applied discounts. And they come up with lots of different ideas there, and that was key to getting a grip on this hidden issue that was going on within the business. And of course, we then helped them put in place systems and procedures to monitor and measure that. And finally, the last kind of strategy that I want to share with you is quite a simple one, and that is this idea that we need to test. We really need to test everything that we're doing on our pricing strategies. In other words, once we have decided that we want to introduce a new pricing strategy, we don't just launch a price increase straight across all our customers on all our product range at the one time. It's quite a sensible thing to try and test some of these new strategies that we've developed. In other words, don't bet the entire business success and future on just launching right across the board, you know, some new pricing strategies. Test them. So test how to increase your new prices. Test this idea of discount structures and changing those discount structures if that is relevant to you. Test the wording of new promises, new guarantees, and new service standards. See how people react to those new guarantees and service standards against an increase in price. Test, introducing new packaging and presenting your product in such a way that it shows much more value, and that the little cost in doing that actually adds value and therefore allows you to increase price. And it's the same, in terms of bundling, adding high value product to an order free of charge that is of low cost to you can also be a good way of doing that. And test this idea of charging different client groups or different product lines at different price points. So don't bet the whole business. Let's test some of this before we launch off and do it. So just to kind of sum up, I know I'm kind of 5 minutes or so behind, so I do apologize for that. But just to sum up, I think for me these are the key points that I'd like you to take away to your own businesses today, and that is firstly to this idea of taking ownership of price and to consider price as strategy. And if you do that and you commit to that, then there's lots of evidence to show why that will pay for you and why that's a worthwhile thing to do. Don't be lazy when it comes to pricing. Give it a little bit more thought. I'm quite happy to look for the easy wins. I think that's a good thing to do too. But certainly don't be lazy. Put in the effort. Know your competition. That's a real basic one, but put in the time and effort to look at what your competitors are doing and saying, how they're presenting themselves, and how in exchange for that they're pricing. Consider a complete new approach, a fresh approach to your existing products and services. How can you take that same existing products and services, put a new spin on it, some new promises, some new service standards, some new value, and therefore some new prices, and for some new prices read higher prices, and for higher prices read more profit. Look to charge different customers across different product lines, different prices, because we're all happy to do that. Dependent on the circumstances under which we choose to buy that products or services. So examine and try and identify different ways, different timing points, different routes to market, etc., that can allow you to charge different prices. Look at this important aspect of controlling discounts. If you are discounting, put in place a measurement system that gives you clarity and visibility on the level of discounting. And above all, as I've just said, test everything. Test. Don't bet the business on launching strategies ad hoc right across your entire client base. And therefore, finally, as I said earlier, your challenge and what I hope you take away from this today is I challenge each and every one of you this morning to take time out to consider your own pricing strategies. I challenge you to take ownership of this issue and really, where possible, to involve your team. Get your team around the table and share these ideas with you. If you don't have a team, get a friendly business owner, colleague, and brainstorm with them. I challenge you to use some of these ideas that we've come up with today. They may not be specific to your industry sector or market, but it's the idea that lies behind those. So I challenge you to look at some of those ideas and to adapt them to your needs and adopt them within your business. And I challenge you also to measure the results that you can get by successfully putting in place some of these new, fantastic and highly profitable pricing strategies that I absolutely know that you will now go off and put in place for your business. So there we are, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you again for joining me this morning. I do very much appreciate your time. I am going to now go into some questions and answers. So I'll be going through some of those questions and answers online now. For those of you who perhaps do have to dash off to other meetings or appointments, then this webinar is being recorded, so you'll be able to tune in later and hear some of the questions. I can see I've got quite a few questions on board, so we can go through some of those. And before I go into the questions, I'll also, I guess, just share with you some of the offers, as it were, that I suggested to you at the beginning of this webinar. If any one of you after this webinar would like to come and join me for a free one-on-one consultation, over a coffee, we'd be delighted to see you, and we can look to help you with your own pricing strategies, or in fact any other growth strategies that you'd like to have our input on, or indeed if you'd like to discuss with us our range of accountancy services and how we can support you in that area, or raising finance, working with banks, solving some problems there, getting grants, looking at tax, whatever, we're more than happy to speak to you. But specifically on the back of today, if you'd like to come and meet with me on a one-to-one consultation, then please get in touch, and I'll be showing you the contact details shortly. Similarly, I'd like to extend an invitation to each and every one of you to join us at this very unique seminar we're hosting. When I mentioned we're bringing Dr. Keith Cleland over from Australia, we're having 2 seminars. They're being held here in Irvine, in sunny Ayrshire, at the Menzies Hotel in Irvine. The first seminar is on Tuesday the 19th of March. It's an early evening seminar starting at 6 o'clock and finishing at 8 o'clock. And the second seminar is on Wednesday the 20th of March. It's an afternoon session running from 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock. Suffice to say, we're really excited about Keith coming over to speak to us and to share some of his insight. Specifically, as I mentioned earlier, Keith is a consultant of some considerable pedigree. He will be sharing with us over 25 years of experience in making dramatic change to business profit performance, and he will be sharing with us his ideas and how he has increased the profit performance and productivity of over 25,000 businesses, can you believe, in areas such as manufacturing, retail, service sectors, right across the entire business spectrum pretty much. Keith will be with us on these 2 days, and we're really looking forward to those sessions. So if you can come along, I'd urge you to come along. I think it's going to be a great use of a couple of hours of your time. And I'm about to also show you how to access some of the Simon Kucher reports and resources. It's a really great website, and they've got some fantastic stuff up there on pricing, etc. So there's the various details that you might want to take away with you, how to get in touch with us, how to get in touch with me, more information on the seminars coming up. www.simon-kucher.com/en/content/pricing is well worth a visit. Lots of great material in there. Or simply just go to the Simon Kucher website. It's very easily navigated from there, and you'll find the information. Our next webinar, which will be coming up, I guess, early April, I think, will be entitled How to Grow Your Sales by 757%, which I know is a very precise number. I'm sure has your curiosity raised, so I'd be very much delighted if you could join me on that session too. But I'm now about to go on to the questions and answers session. So for those of you who have to skip off now, once again, thanks very much for listening, and I hope you can join me again soon. Okay, let me just now have a look at some of the questions that we have. Okay, here we have my market is fierce. This is from Stuart. My market is fiercely price competitive. I'd have real problems increasing price. Any suggestions? Stuart, yeah, it's really tough if you are in a very, very competitive price market. I fully understand that, and I think it's probably coming back to this issue about the need to show our customers more value. How do we really differentiate ourselves. How do we get a customer to notice that difference? And I guess without knowing your own sector, it's maybe a bit difficult to be specific, but perhaps by looking at how you could bundle in an additional product or service. So something I touched on briefly, the idea might be to give your customers something that's a low cost to you, a low cost to the business, but a high value to the customer. That might be one approach. I'm just trying to think of an example. Say something like a restaurant that has a £25 set menu and is looking to push that up to, let's say, £29. They could potentially do that by offering a free cocktail and coffee. So, a free cocktail and coffee might have a value to the customer, a perceived value to the customer of £7 or £8, but a cost to the business of only, I don't know, £1, £1.50, something like that. So by the business incurring an additional £1 or so cost, they can push the price of that set menu from £25 up to £29 by introducing something that is perceived by the client to be of high value. So when you're in a fiercely competitive competitive market, I think it's this area of differentiating, showing value, and really getting your customers to see that value and therefore be prepared to pay a little bit more. What else have we got here? We have what Ronnie is asking, what is the best way to test if my customers will wear a price increase? Yep, that's a good question. And I tend to suggest a few options when I'm working with businesses and we're looking at strategies that we want to test. I think the first and simplest is, in fact, to speak with your customers. So, you want to be chatting with your customers to gauge an initial reaction before we perhaps go and roll out that particular price strategy. So what I would suggest is perhaps calling, a low-risk customer. By low-risk, I mean somebody that we've got a really good relationship with and we can pick up the phone and have a chat with. And you might be, want to pick up the phone and I don't know, kind of say something along the lines of, hi Bill, I'd really appreciate if I could canvass your opinion, that sort of thing. I'm looking to implement a price increase of 10%. Is this something that we can work with? Or whatever it is, but you get the idea. I think, taking some low-risk customers, speaking to them about it before we launch that certainly de-risks that process. The other thing that you can do is also to write out, just announcing a price increase to your customers, but you might want to again kind of segment your customer base and therefore not do it to all customers. You might again test a low risk group of customers. That might be customers that are really important to you. Also at the other end of the spectrum might be customers that frankly you wouldn't be too bothered if you lost. So you might want to take a sample of your customers and test that price increase to see what the reaction is. You might just be surprised, and often I find people are. And of course the other thing is, you might want to just kind of introduce a price increase across a specific range of your products or services rather than right across the entire range. So that's another way to test and see how that goes, and then once you know how that goes, then you've got the confidence to work and extend across other product ranges. So yeah, testing is really important, and these are some of the approaches that I would recommend. Karen's saying, can you send me the link to the Simon Kucher report? Yes, well, it's on screen now. If you're still on board with us, then there it is, but certainly I will email that to you later today, absolutely. What else have we got? Colin, the risk that the company that offered the stock plan, would they not be carrying the risk and cost of increased stock? The company, yeah, oh yes, I see what you mean. Yes, yeah, that particular company, absolutely, that's true. But what we did was we calculated the financial cost of carrying that extra stock. So we looked at an exercise that sort of said, well, we've no increase in our manufacturing costs, that's the same. We have no increase on our raw material costs, that's the same. The actual cost was, in real terms, I guess, in cash flow terms, that we were holding stock that we weren't getting paid for, and therefore there is costs associated with that. So we did an analysis of what the cost was to the business in providing this stocking facility, and needless to say that cost to the business was significantly less than the margin, the loss of margin that the company would have experienced if it was trying to win that order based on price alone. Because it had been made clear that this was a price-sensitive, sharpen your pencil type order. And having done that, as I mentioned, it also allowed the company to request this kind of longer-term commitment from the customer. And that commitment was about the pattern and frequency of orders, on the level of orders, etc., and actually allowed us not only to protect the prices ultimately, but it changed that from being a kind of an initial £40,000 order from memory up to being £100,000. So yes, there were costs associated with introducing that pricing strategy, but we costed that out before we implemented the strategy itself. I'm just conscious of everyone's time, so I think I'll take one more question just now, and then what I'll do is I promise you I'll get back to everyone with your other questions, and we'll go over those for you, and I can come back to you. But one more. So Alistair is asking, you mentioned the need to minimize defection and replace lost clients. Can you expand? Yeah, that's a good point. This whole issue about client defection and fear of losing clients as a result of introducing new pricing strategies. So client defection is the recognition that if we are losing clients as a result of a new price strategy, it might actually indicate that that strategy hasn't been tested properly, or potentially it's been implemented badly. Not always, but if there is a pattern of clients leaving, or too much resistance on price, then potentially we've got that wrong, or we've not. And this is the importance of testing. We do need to test, or it's potentially been implemented badly. So the quality, it goes back to this quality of dialogue again. The need to have, I would say, where possible, really good face-to-face meetings, or good quality dialogue, to make sure that we're addressing issues, and that we're showing our customer the value, and that we're protecting that customer relationship wherever we can. And I guess the kind of back end of that is, what about expanding on how we replace lost clients? Well, I guess this is where the whole kind of question of churn comes into factor. One out, one in sort of thing, and therefore managing that process is kind of a sales function rather than a pricing function. But we need to think about them together. So we need to be thinking about the consequences of growing our prices to allow us to become more profitable. Some of the consequences that we could lose clients, but we're going to lose clients of the type that we'd be happy to lose, if you know what I mean. But we need to be thinking about sales strategy that are going to replace those clients, and we're going to replace these clients with clients who are happy to pay our price and will be delighted to be working with us. Okay, I think that's about it for now. I've kind of gone over a little bit, which I'm prone to doing, so do forgive me on that. Don't forget to get in touch if you'd like some help, as we've described. Don't forget to check out the other events that we're having, and you can see those at rjhart.com/events. And finally, I guess, once again, thank you so much for joining me today. I really hope you've enjoyed this session. I hope it stimulated some ideas for your business, and I really hope that you can join me once again for future sessions. Have a great weekend, and bye for now.